What if I told you that the way you begin your morning could shape your entire destiny? Before the noise of the world rushes in, what would happen if you paused to make room for something eternal? Maybe, just maybe, the peace you've been searching for starts with 3 simple words: God comes first. Begin script. Good morning, my friend. Take a breath before the emails, before the news, before the traffic and the to-do lists and the endless expectations. I want to invite you into a sacred moment. A moment that could change not just your day, but your life. There's a principle found in Matthew 6:33. You may have heard it before. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But this one verse holds a profound truth that we often overlook in the rush of daily living. When we put God first, above our schedule, above our worries, above even our dreams, everything else begins to fall into place. Not always instantly, not always the way we expect, but in a way that's deeper, richer, more anchored in peace. Let me ask you, how do you usually start your day? Maybe you roll out of bed, reach for your phone, scroll through the latest news, skim emails, sip coffee, and dive headfirst into your obligations. Most of us do. It's the rhythm of modern life. But what if we flipped that rhythm? What if the very first breath of our day was dedicated to realigning our heart, not with the chaos of the world, but with the calm, unwavering presence of God? When we begin the day seeking Him first, something changes. It's like tuning an instrument. The noise settles, the anxiety fades, and we step into the day with clarity, not because the problems are gone, but because our perspective is grounded in Him. I remember a time in my own life when mornings were the most stressful part of my day. I'd wake up already behind, already anxious, already chasing after things I thought would give me peace, productivity, achievement, approval. But peace didn't live there. It wasn't until I began starting each day with quiet, just me, a simple prayer and a willingness to say God before anything else and you. That's when things shifted, not overnight. But gradually my days became different, not easier, but lighter, not perfect, but purposeful. Putting God first doesn't mean ignoring your responsibilities. It means inviting Him into them. It's not a spiritual checkbox, it's a relationship reset. Think about it this way. Imagine starting a road trip with your GPS already set to the wrong destination. No matter how fast or efficiently you drive, you're still heading the wrong way. But if you stop, check your direction, and recenter, then even a small step becomes progress toward the life God has for you. That's what happens when we begin our day by putting Him first. We align ourselves with His direction, His wisdom, His purpose, and let me tell you, there's nothing more powerful than living aligned with God. It doesn't mean life gets easy, but it does mean you stop walking alone. It means that when the storms come, and they will come, you're not just reacting, you're rooted. Rooted in a peace that surpasses all understanding. Rooted in a hope that holds steady even when everything else shakes. Rooted in love that doesn't depend on your performance, but on His promise. Putting God first also changes how we treat people. When I start my day with Him, I'm more patient with my kids. I speak more kindly to strangers. I see interruptions not as annoyances, but as divine appointments. I make decisions not just based on logic, but on prayer. And over time, that's not just a better morning. That's a better life. So what does it actually look like to put God first? It's not complicated. Sometimes it's whispering a prayer before your feet hit the floor. Sometimes it's reading a psalm with your morning coffee. Sometimes it's just sitting in silence, acknowledging His presence before the day begins. It's less about the method and more about the heart posture. A simple surrender that says, God, I invite you into this day. Guide my steps, guard my heart, speak through my words. Be first, not because you need it, but because I do. If you've never tried starting your day this way, I want to challenge you. Just try it. 7 days, just 7 mornings where you pause, breathe, and seek God first. Watch what changes, not necessarily around you, but within you. Let this be the beginning of something new. Not a religious routine, but a relationship revolution. God isn't asking you to be perfect. He's asking you to be present, to show up, to turn your face toward Him before you turn it toward the world. So tomorrow morning, before anything else, say it out loud if you need to, God first. Let that be your anchor, your compass, your quiet rebellion against the noise of this world. Because when God is first, everything else finds its place. So let's imagine this. You've just made that quiet but bold decision to begin your day by putting God first. Maybe, for the first time in a long time, you didn't reach for your phone first, you reached for peace. You reached for God. But here's a truth we often overlook. Faith becomes powerful when it's spoken. There's something about saying it out loud, or even writing it down, that gives it life, that takes it from an internal hope to an external reality. That's why in this very moment, I want to encourage you to do something incredibly simple, but spiritually significant. Just say it. God first in my life. Or write it in the comments below. Declare it, not just as words, but as truth, as your truth, because declarations shape direction. You see, we make declarations all the time, whether we realize it or not. Every time we say, I'm so tired, or this will never work, or I don't have what it takes, we're speaking something into the atmosphere, into our thoughts, into our future. But what if we flipped the script? What if, instead of letting fear or fatigue narrate our day, we spoke faith? Saying God first in my life is more than a religious phrase. It's a daily alignment, a reset, a reminder to your soul, to your schedule, and even to your struggles, that God is in charge, that you're not navigating this life alone. Let me give you a small example. There was a season in my life where things felt out of control. Finances were tight, relationships were strained. I was waking up in the middle of the night, heart racing, overwhelmed by what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. One morning, out of pure desperation, I said something different. I whispered, God first, even if I don't feel it, even if things don't make sense. I didn't even realize it at the time, but I was declaring faith in the dark. That phrase, those two words, became an anchor for me. God first. In meetings, in conversations, in uncertainty. And slowly, peace began to return, not because life suddenly became easy, but because my heart was no longer trying to carry what only God was meant to hold. Sometimes the loudest declarations don't happen in public. They happen in quiet kitchens while pouring coffee. They happen in cars on the way to work. They happen in whispers when no one else is listening. But heaven is, and that's what makes it powerful. So I'll ask you again, what are you declaring over your life today? Are you declaring stress? Or are you declaring strength? Are you declaring fear? Or are you declaring faith? There's a reason the Bible says, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Proverbs 18:21. When you speak God first, you are choosing life. You are calling your spirit to attention. You're saying, today, I'm not led by my emotions. I'm not driven by my schedule. I'm led by Him. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to feel super spiritual to start. Maybe you feel weak. Maybe you feel distant from God. Maybe you feel like you've failed too many times. And still, this invitation stands. Declare it anyway. Because declarations aren't about pretending. They're about positioning. You're not declaring where you are. You're declaring where you're going. You're not describing your circumstances. You're aligning with truth. And truth, unlike circumstances, never changes. Let's think of it like this. When a captain steers a ship, they don't wait for the storm to stop before setting the course. They set the compass and hold steady, even when the winds rage. That's what God first does for your soul. It's your internal compass, your fixed direction, even when everything around you shifts. And don't underestimate the ripple effect of a declaration. When you speak God first, your kids hear it, your friends feel it, your workplace starts to notice a different kind of calm in you. And most importantly, you start to believe it. Because what you speak repeatedly, you begin to live authentically. Some of you watching this might be thinking, that sounds nice, but I'm not the kind of person who writes declarations in comment sections. I get it. It can feel strange at first, but think of it this way. The moment you type those words, God first in my life, you're not just commenting, you're committing. You're saying, today I'm choosing a higher way, a quieter strength, a steadier peace. You're joining a community of people around the world who are waking up and deciding that faith isn't a Sunday thing, it's an everyday way of life. Because here's the truth, friend. The world doesn't need louder opinions. It needs deeper convictions. It needs people like you and me who will rise each morning and declare something eternal, something solid, something unshakable. God first, say it, type it, pray it, live it, and remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about being positioned for peace, positioned for purpose, positioned for the presence of God to lead the way. I want you to imagine something with me before we continue. Imagine a world where millions of people begin their day with this simple declaration, where the first thing filling our minds isn't, it's like finding a spring in the middle of a desert. You don't just drink from it and walk away. You tell others, you bring them to it. You point the thirsty in the right direction. And friend, the world is thirsty. People all around us are searching, desperately, for something real. They're trying to fill the void with busy schedules, material success, relationships, distractions, but underneath it all, there's a longing for something deeper, something unshakable, something holy, and that's where you come in. Yes, you. Right where you are. You don't have to be perfect, you don't have to be a pastor or a theologian. You just have to be willing to share the light you've received, willing to say, this helped me, maybe it'll help you too. And that begins with a simple invitation. When you share the message, God first, you're not pushing religion. You're extending hope. You're saying, there's a better way to start the day, a better way to live. So maybe that looks like texting this video to a friend. Maybe it's posting the phrase God first on your social media feed, not as a trend, but as a testimony. Maybe it's praying with your kids before school. Maybe it's just starting a conversation with someone who looks a little lost. These aren't grand gestures, but they carry eternal weight, because when you share faith, you give others permission to believe too. And here's the beauty of it. You don't have to see the full impact to know it's real. You might never know how your simple message changed someone's life. You might never hear the story of how your text came at just the right moment. You might never meet the person who read your comment and decided to pray for the first time in years. But that's not your burden to carry. That's God's. Your role is to plant the seed, to shine the light, to show up in faith, and let God do the rest. Let's pause here for a moment and imagine something together. Imagine thousands, no, millions, of people around the world waking up each morning and starting their day with the same declaration, God first. Imagine the ripple effect that would have. Imagine boardrooms filled with people who prayed before their meetings. Imagine classrooms led by teachers who whispered, God lead me, before greeting their students. Imagine construction workers, nurses, accountants, stay-at-home parents, delivery drivers, all stepping into their daily lives carrying the presence of God. That's not a fantasy, that's a movement. And movements don't begin in stadiums. They begin in quiet living rooms, in whispered prayers, in shared videos, in daily declarations. They begin with people like you, choosing faith, not just for themselves, but for their families, their communities, their world. Because here's what we must remember. Faith is contagious. When someone sees your peace, they'll want to know where it came from. When someone hears your words of encouragement, they'll wonder what's fueling your hope. When someone watches how you respond to adversity, they'll start asking questions that lead them back to God. And just like that, you become more than a believer. You become a bridge between someone's brokenness and God's healing, between their confusion and His clarity, between their chaos and His peace. You don't need to be loud. You just need to be faithful, a faithful voice in someone's timeline, a faithful presence in someone's pain, a faithful reminder that God is still near. And this all starts with sharing the message. So I want to challenge you today, not just to declare God first for yourself, but to pass it on to your spouse, to your siblings, to the friend who's been distant from God, to the co-worker who's going through a hard time, to the stranger who scrolls past your post but pauses because something in their spirit recognizes truth. You never know what God can do with one act of obedience. You never know when your words will become someone else's turning point. And that's what makes this moment sacred, because right now, you have the chance to not only say God first in my life, but to help someone else say it too. And just think, if thousands of us commit to this, what might change? What might shift in our cities, our families, our nations? We often pray for revival, but revival doesn't always start with thunder. Sometimes it starts with a whisper, with a quiet morning, a bold declaration, and a willingness to share. So as you listen to this, don't let it stop with you. Take the message further, send it, share it, speak it. Let it live beyond this moment. Because this isn't just inspiration, it's invitation. An invitation to be part of something bigger than any of us individually. An invitation to build a community that lives on purpose, anchored in faith, aligned with heaven. Let's make this real. Let's make it visible. Let's make God first, not just a phrase, but a lifestyle. Let it show up in our conversations, our decisions, our love, our leadership, and let it echo louder and louder until the whole world hears it. God first, and not just in my life, but in our lives, in our homes, in our culture, in our future. Let's start a movement, not with noise, but with conviction. Let's show the world what happens when people truly live with God at the center. Let's make this message go far and wide, and it starts with you. So now that we've talked about making a declaration of faith and about sharing it with others, you might be asking yourself, but what happens when it gets hard? What happens when I put God first? And life still feels like a battlefield? That's a real question, and it deserves a real answer. So let's go back, way back, to one of the boldest, rawest, most faith-filled stories in Scripture, a story about a man named Elijah. Now, Elijah wasn't a king. He wasn't born into power or privilege. He was a prophet, just a man with a heart that beat fully and fearlessly for God. And the world he lived in, it was dark, corrupt, chaotic. Israel, the chosen people of God, had turned away from their Creator. They were worshipping false gods, especially Baal, a pagan idol of storms and fertility. The nation was spiritually dry, but also physically. A drought had scorched the land for years. In the middle of this crisis, God raised up Elijah, and he gave him a task that would terrify most of us: stand up alone for truth in a nation full of compromise. Have you ever been there? Have you ever felt like the only one holding onto your values, while everyone else drifts further from God? That was Elijah's world. And yet, he didn't shrink back. He didn't hide. He didn't wait for things to get better. He obeyed, and that obedience led him to one of the most dramatic moments in the entire Bible, the showdown on Mount Carmel. Now picture this. It's not a private prayer meeting. It's a public spectacle. Hundreds of prophets of Baal gather. The crowd watches with bated breath. And in the middle of it all, one man, Elijah, stands completely alone. One voice for God versus 450 voices shouting for Baal. Elijah calls for a challenge. He tells the prophets of Baal, "You build an altar, I'll build an altar. We'll each pray to our God. And the God who answers by fire, that's the real God." Bold, absolutely, reckless. Not if you know who you serve. So the prophets of Baal go first. All morning they shout, dance, cry out. Nothing. Hours pass, still nothing. They even cut themselves in desperation. Still silence. And then Elijah steps forward. He doesn't scream. He doesn't perform. He doesn't panic. He simply prays, "Lord, let it be known today that you are God in Israel and I am your servant." That's it. And in that moment, fire falls from heaven. Not just a flicker, not just a spark, a consuming fire that burns the sacrifice, the stones, the water they had poured all around it. Every trace is gone. And the people, they fall to their knees. "The Lord, He is God," they cry. "The Lord, He is God." It's stunning, it's unforgettable. But here's what I want you to take from this story today. Elijah put God first, even when it meant standing alone, even when it looked foolish, even when his life was on the line, and because of that, God showed up in power. Do you realize what that means? It means that when you put God first, not just in peaceful mornings or inspiring moments, But in your battles, your tension, your valleys, God will meet you there. He may not always send fire from the sky, but He will send power. He will answer. He will defend His name through your faith, but you have to take the step. You have to be willing to say, even if no one else goes with me, I will stand for Him. You might not be called to face 450 false prophets, but maybe you're called to speak up in a workplace where compromise is normal. Maybe you're raising kids in a culture that tells them truth is relative, and you feel like the only one trying to teach what's right. Maybe you're battling fear, addiction, or doubt, and you feel like the odds are stacked against you. Elijah's story reminds us, you plus God, a majority. You are not outnumbered when the God of fire is standing with you. And here's the other thing. Elijah didn't manipulate the moment. He didn't light the fire himself. He didn't try to make something happen on his own strength. He simply obeyed and trusted that God would do what only God can do. Some of us try to light our own fires. Don't. We try to control the outcome. We try to force the blessing. We try to create the breakthrough. But real faith lets go of control and says, God, I've done my part. Now I trust you to do yours. Faith is obedience without a guaranteed outcome. It's standing in the middle of the dry land and believing the rain will come. It's placing your offering on the altar, even if you don't know when or how the fire will fall. It's believing that God sees, even when it feels like no one else does. Let me ask you something personal. What is your Mount Carmel? What's the place in your life where God is asking you to trust Him completely, to stand in faith even when it's uncomfortable, unpopular, uncertain? Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's your finances. Maybe it's a dream you've been too afraid to pursue. Maybe it's just the choice to put God first, day after day, even when no one around you seems to care. Wherever it is, take heart, because the God who answered Elijah is still the same today. He's not impressed by numbers. He's not overwhelmed by opposition. He's not intimidated by droughts, by doubts, or by delays. He responds to faith, simple, surrendered, bold faith. And when He shows up, everything changes. I want to share something personal here. There was a moment in my life when I felt outnumbered spiritually. I was in an environment where it felt easier to blend in than to stand out, and for a while I did just that. I stayed quiet. I coasted. I chose comfort over conviction. But the more I tried to be accepted, the more disconnected I felt from the peace of God, until one day I sensed that quiet whisper, "Will you put me first even here?" It wasn't dramatic. I didn't call down fire, but I did speak up. I did say no to things that once felt safe. I did choose to start my days in prayer even when people rolled their eyes. And slowly but surely I began to see God move, not just around me, but inside me. That's what faith does. That's what Elijah's story reminds us. It's not about being the loudest. It's about being the most aligned with God's truth, aligned with His purpose, aligned with His power. So today, wherever you are, however outnumbered you may feel, I want to remind you of this. One person fully surrendered to God can change the atmosphere. You can be the Elijah of your home, the Elijah of your office, the Elijah of your generation. All it takes is a heart that says, God, I put you first, no matter what. And when you do, He will show up. Maybe not with literal fire, but with clarity, with strength, with divine favor. He will turn your altar of obedience into a testimony of His glory. So as we continue this journey together, remember, declarations are powerful. Community multiplies faith. But obedience brings fire. Are you willing to trust God with your Mount Carmel moment? Are you willing to stand alone if it means standing with Him? Then say it again, from the depth of your heart, God first, and watch what He does next. So far on this journey, we've talked about putting God first. We've declared it, shared it, and even seen what it looks like through the bold faith of Elijah. But now we arrive at the most intimate, most personal, and perhaps the most powerful part of all. Prayer. Let's pause right here and take a breath, because this is where the noise ends. This is where the striving settles. This is where connection begins. Prayer isn't a ritual. It's not a religious performance. Prayer is presence. It's honesty. It's surrender. It's conversation with the very one who created you, sees you, and holds your life in his hands. You don't need fancy words. You don't need a perfect environment. You just need a willing heart. You see, when you start your day in prayer, you're not just speaking into the air. You're aligning with the heart of God. You're choosing not to walk into the world on your own, but to walk covered, guided, protected. So let me ask you something. How different would your day look if the first person you spoke to was God? Imagine opening your eyes in the morning, not to anxiety, not to stress, not to news headlines, but to a quiet moment where you whisper, "God, thank you for today. Lead me, strengthen me, use me." It doesn't take an hour. Sometimes a single sentence can shift your whole spirit, because prayer isn't about length, it's about depth. It's not about performance, it's about presence. And in that presence, something happens, fear melts, clarity comes, peace settles in. Maybe today you're carrying something heavy, a decision you don't know how to make, a relationship that's falling apart, a body that's tired, a mind that won't rest. Friend, you don't have to carry that alone. Prayer is where you bring the weight and leave with peace. It's where you say, "God, I don't have it all figured out, but I trust that you do." It's where you lay down control and pick up confidence, not in yourself, but in the one who holds tomorrow. I remember a morning, maybe not that long ago, when I felt overwhelmed before the day even began. The kind of morning where your heart races before your feet hit the floor. I sat in silence, unsure of what to even say to God, and then I heard it. Not audibly, but in my spirit. Just one word. Start here. So I did. I didn't bring eloquence. I brought exhaustion. I didn't bring answers. I brought anxiety. And still, God met me there, because He's not looking for perfection. He's looking for presence. Your presence. Your voice. Your attention. That's what prayer is. And here's the beautiful irony. We often come to prayer thinking we're bringing something to God, but really, He's the one giving to us. In prayer, we receive. We receive wisdom, the kind that cuts through confusion and shows us the next step, maybe not 10 steps ahead, but just enough light for today. We receive strength, the kind of quiet strength that doesn't come from caffeine or motivational quotes, but from the Spirit of God living inside of us. We receive love, not the conditional kind we're used to, but unconditional, unwavering, can't-be-shaken love that reminds us, you are not alone. And we receive protection, sometimes physical, sometimes emotional, sometimes spiritual, because when you start your day covered in prayer, you're walking into your battles already armored. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, but I don't know how to pray. I don't have the right words. Let me set you free right now. There is no right way to pray. God isn't grading your grammar. He's listening to your heart. If all you can say is, "God, help me," He hears you. If all you can whisper is, "Thank you," He delights in that. If you can't even find words and you just sit in silence, He's still there holding you. The power of prayer is not in what you say. It's in who you're speaking to, and that one, our Father, is not distant. He's close. He's personal. He's attentive. And He longs to hear from you. Every morning you have a divine invitation, not just to wake up physically, but to wake up spiritually, to say, "Lord, today is yours. I don't know what it holds, but I know you're holding me. Give me your wisdom. Fill me with your peace. Lead me with your love." It's that simple, but it changes everything, because prayer shifts our posture. It takes us from anxious to anchored, from rushed to rested, from distracted to devoted. And when prayer becomes your rhythm, your day becomes a song, a melody of trust, a rhythm of surrender. So what would happen if tomorrow, before your feet touched the ground, before the coffee brewed, before the phone lit up, you paused, just for a moment, and you prayed, not out of obligation, but out of love, out of relationship, out of need? I believe something holy would begin, a habit that turns into a hunger that leads to intimacy, intimacy that leads to transformation. Because here's the quiet truth: you can't pray consistently and stay the same. Over time, your heart softens, your ears open, Your vision clears. You begin to see people differently. You speak more gently. You trust more fully. You start to live not just with God in mind, but with God in the center. That's the power of prayer. It's not about fixing your problems. It's about framing them in faith. It's not about getting what you want. It's about wanting more of Him. It's not about escaping life. It's about embracing it with God beside you. So wherever you are today, whatever you're carrying, I invite you to pause right here, right now, and breathe. Just say His name. Whisper a prayer. Let your heart be known. Let His presence meet you. And tomorrow morning, do it again. Create space, even if it's just 5 minutes, even if it's messy, even if your kids are loud and your coffee's cold. Make the space, because in that space is strength. In that space is peace. In that space is God. And when God is in it, nothing is ordinary. Not your mornings, not your words, not your life. So as we continue this journey of putting God first, let's not just talk about Him. Let's talk to Him. Let's make prayer our starting point, our safe place, our source of joy, peace, and clarity. Because no matter where the day takes us, we can always return to this truth. He listens. He loves. He leads. Let's pray every morning, every moment, and let's live like we believe He hears, because He does. And that changes everything. So now we've journeyed together from the first whisper of God first, to bold declarations of faith, to the fire of Mount Carmel, and into the quiet power of prayer. But if there's one thing I want to leave with you, it's this. Putting God first isn't a one-time act. It's a daily decision. It's a lifestyle. It's easy to feel inspired for a moment, to catch that spiritual high from a powerful story or a moving prayer. But what happens when the video ends? When the day gets loud again? When the old habits creep back in? This is where the real beauty begins, because putting God first isn't about perfection. It's about practice. Just like brushing your teeth or brewing your morning coffee, it's a rhythm you build, a choice you make, not once, but over and over again. Every single morning you get to decide, will I walk into this day on my own, or will I walk into it with God? And friend, that decision changes everything. Because when God is first in your thoughts, your mind is guarded. When God is first in your words, your conversations become life-giving. When God is first in your actions, your day is marked by grace and impact. I'm not talking about adding more things to your already full to-do list. I'm talking about inviting God into the things you already do. Pray before that work meeting. Thank Him while making breakfast. Ask for His wisdom before replying to that tough email. Speak peace in traffic instead of frustration. Small steps, simple shifts, but they realign your soul. You don't have to overhaul your whole life in one day. You just have to start. Because the more you practice putting God first, the more it becomes second nature. You'll start to notice a new kind of strength rising in you. Not the kind that comes from striving or hustling, but the kind that comes from knowing deep in your bones that you are not walking alone. And that brings peace. Not temporary calm, but lasting peace. The kind that anchors you even when circumstances are shaky. The kind that quiets your fears even when answers don't come right away. That peace, it's a byproduct of presence. And presence begins with priority. When you prioritize God, you begin to hear Him more clearly. You sense His nudges. You catch glimpses of His guidance. Little moments that confirm, yes, I'm with you. It might be a verse that shows up at just the right time, or a friend who texts encouragement when you needed it most, or a decision that once felt impossible, but now feels clear. That's divine alignment, and that alignment unlocks something powerful. Favor. I don't mean material wealth or a life without problems. I mean the kind of favor where doors open that you couldn't force, where peace fills places you once only knew anxiety, where the right opportunities meet you because you were in the right posture. God honors those who honor Him. So when you live your day with Him at the center, you're not just surviving. You're walking in purpose. You're walking in grace. You're walking in favor. And here's the part that may be the most important of all. This isn't just about you. Because when God is first in your life, something beautiful begins to happen in the lives around you. You become light. You become salt. You become a living reflection of who Christ is. The way you love, starts to look different. The way you listen, forgive, serve, it all starts to reflect something deeper. People may not always know why you're calm when things are chaotic, or why you speak gently when others lash out, or why you serve when no one's watching. But they'll feel it, and they'll be drawn to it. That's how movements begin, not through force, but through faithfulness. We live in a world that's desperate for peace, desperate for hope, desperate for something real, and you've been given the chance to show them the way, not through grand speeches, not through arguing or posting, but through a daily life that says, I put God first and it changed everything. So let me ask you, what would happen if every morning we all woke up and started our day with one thought? God, this day is yours. What if we made every sunrise an offering, a moment to reset, to surrender? To say, I don't know what's ahead, but I know who goes before me. That could change a home, that could change a workplace, that could change a neighborhood, that could change a generation. Because movements don't begin with crowds, they begin with one person, making one choice, over and over again, and that person could be you. So tomorrow morning, when your alarm goes off, before your feet hit the floor, before the texts, the news, the emails, pause and offer your day. You don't have to have the perfect words. You don't have to feel fully ready. You just have to be willing. Say it again like it's a vow, God first, in my thoughts, in my words, in my actions. Let that be the foundation. Let that be your rhythm. Let that be your legacy. Because when you live this way, not perfectly but purposefully, you'll start to notice the fruit. More peace in your mind, more clarity in your decisions, more joy in your relationships, more courage in your calling, and maybe best of all, more of Him, because this isn't just a habit, it's a heart posture. It's a lifestyle of worship. It's a movement of returning to what matters most. So right here, right now, make the choice not just to believe in God, but to put Him first, and let the rest of your life be a reflection of that one sacred choice, a life that begins again and again each morning with God first.